All right, this one might have been a good candidate for the freezer. You never know. Wasn't me. Yeah. Hello, everybody. My name's Caitlin, and I'm with Candeo Candle and Candeo Candle Supply. And today I'm going to actually show you how to make molded beeswax candles, like tapers, pillars of all shapes and sizes, things like that. I know there can be a lot of frustration when you're making pillars, especially with beeswax, because it shrinks a lot. So I'm going to show you how to deal with that, how to get the wicks in these so that they don't leak everywhere, how to get them out of the molds once you are done, because that can be a huge hassle, and anything else that I can possibly think of. So come along with me. So first things first, this is what you're going to need in order to do this. You're going to need some pillar wax. You're going to need the molds that you want to use. Your wick, of course, you're going to want that. Something to melt your wax in. Either you can use a double boiler. I have a Presto pot right here, or they make a lot of small self-contained melting units that you can buy. The only thing that I want to make a note of, because I've looked at some of the ones on Amazon, is make sure that it has a low setting below 200 degrees. If it doesn't have a setting that goes below that, or if it doesn't show you what temperature you're heating it to, I would not recommend it. So keep that in mind. You're also going to want silicone spray and plumber's putty. You can find both of these things. Well, I don't know if you can find this at the hardware store. You can probably find this at the craft store, actually. This you can find at the hardware store. If you can't find this at the craft store, you can get it on Amazon. That's where I ordered mine. Yeah, a pitcher, of course, and a thermometer so that you can measure the temperature. In my case, I like to use the infrared thermometers. It makes life just a little bit easier. So yeah, let's get started. All right, so first things first. Ooh, that is nice and hot. I've preheated this a little bit. It's just on the warm setting. We're gonna put our beeswax in here. Now, I'm using beeswax today. You can use, there's pillar waxes in soy wax and paraffin, and beeswax is my favorite. I wouldn't recommend using pillar soy wax on its own. I know a lot of people do, and you can. It's just a lot more fragile, especially for like a beginner. If you're making these for the first time, it's going to be a lot more difficult to work with. So beeswax is going to be generally pretty easy and forgiving to start with. Even paraffin wax, I know that's a big no-no. It's going to be easier. It's just going to be easier to work with at first. So I don't know. It's a personal choice. What we're going to do, we're going to put our beeswax in here and let it melt. Now, the beeswax, you want to heat it to 185 degrees. You do not want to go above that. What will happen is if you go above 85 degrees for too long of a time, it'll start discoloring the wax, and it changes the characteristics of it. So I wouldn't recommend that. I'm going to put 2 blocks in here. I believe these are about 2 pounds each. I haven't weighed these, but based off of the amount of blocks I got from the beekeeper I bought these from, I ordered 10 pounds and I think I got 5 blocks. So that's about 2 pounds. And this is from a local beekeeper, by the way. If you want beeswax, what I would recommend you do, go on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, something like that, and look for a beekeeper that sells honey, okay? If they sell honey, they have beeswax. They may or may not process it. It depends on what they do with it and how long they've been doing it. But you know, this is a byproduct of keeping bees. You're gonna have beeswax too. And you might as well support somebody local, right? I mean, that's the best thing. This was from a local person here in Lewiston. They have the most amazing honey. I got at the farmer's market here last summer, I believe. And I saw that they had honey listed again for sale on Marketplace and contacted them. And sure enough, they had beeswax. So we're gonna melt this. I'm just gonna put this in here. And then I'm gonna put this to the side while we do some other things to get prepped. So I've got a couple different kinds here. These are aluminum molds. And then these are taper molds that I got online at a discount retailer. I'm sure a lot of people will be familiar with. I'm not going to name it on here, but it has 4 letters. So yeah, I don't buy a lot of stuff on there. I haven't recently, but yeah, I've bought stuff before. Sometimes you get what you pay for. Sometimes it turns out okay. These taper molds actually, I think are pretty nice actually. So we're gonna wick these first. So we have the wick here that I just made it into a point to make it easier. So these taper molds that I got off of Emu with the T, we're not gonna name names, but you know what I'm talking about. You're going to just separate them. They come apart like this, okay? That makes it a little bit easier. And then you're going to just string this through there like that. And then you can kind of pull it. It's gonna be tight, and you want it tight. You don't need any putty on these tapers. They're not gonna leak because the beeswax itself is gonna stop the hole there. So just pull that through until you have, I don't know, 2 inches maybe. Okay, actually pull it through a little bit farther. Okay, and then what you're gonna do is tie a slip knot at the end, and I can't do this with gloves on, so I'm gonna have to take my gloves off. And you're gonna want it to be a slip knot, because if you tie a regular knot, then you're gonna have to cut this off to get it off, unless you're really good at undoing knots. And if you have to cut it off, your wick's gonna be really short on your taper, so don't do that. Just do a slip knot. Which, to do that, by the way, you just make a loop, okay? And then you make another little loop. Pull it back through again. And then you're gonna push it through the loop, like so. Ta-da, and then you have a little tail. And then you can pull on the tail when you are ready to demold your candle. And yeah, it makes life easier. Okay, and then what you wanna do is pull this really tight, like so. And that way it's held tightly against there. I got little bits of wax on there. All right. And that helps stop your hole too. All right, now for this particular one, just string it up through here, like so, and then you're gonna put it back on. Ta-da, we are done. We have succeeded. All right, and then I would trim this. It's probably good. And that one is ready to go. So you're ready to pour your wax in there. So I'll put this one to the side. I'm gonna put these gloves to the side for now until I'm ready to pour. All right. Push your wick through, just like so, the bottom, okay, right until it comes out the top. And then we're gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna trim it because I don't need it this long. I can make some votives with this little shorty guy here. Put that to the side for now. Okay. And then it's making noises over there, the wax melting. A little slip knot. Okay, leave a tail. Pull it tight. Now this one doesn't have a lip on it, so you're gonna find like it's gonna make it a little wobbly. So what I like to do is actually take these guys and then I'll push it down on a hard surface. Just to kind of flatten the wick out and press it against the bottom of the mold. If you have a table, like I've got padding on my table. I have a regular table behind me that I could use, but we're just gonna use that there. And that kind of flattens that so that it makes it more flush, so it's not so wobbly. All right, and then we're gonna do the same thing with the plumber's putty. Whoops. Just gonna take a little ball of it. playing Play-Doh, you know, just like when you were 5. Hey, I still play Play-Doh sometimes. I have an 8-year-old, so he doesn't play it as much as what he did when he was younger, but every once in a while he gets on a Play-Doh kick. Or he makes me make Play-Doh. Oh, and then you get plumber's putty stuck in your fingernails. It's no good. Okay. And then same thing. So, and well, of course, the plumber's putty is not only going to prevent leaks, but it keeps this from happening where your wick's moving around. You don't want that either. I mean, that's part of the reason it's going to leak, because it's moving everywhere. Right. Just smooth that out. You may actually even want to trim this tail a little bit so it doesn't stick out, and so you can cover it up completely, just because it can still leak out past that. It seems to me that it's the hotter the wax is that you're putting in these molds, the more likely they are to leak. You're going to take your wick and you're going to string it through your mold like so until you get just to basically right here at the top. Then you're going to flip it over and we're going to tie a slip knot. Use this one that's done over here. You stay right there, buddy. We don't want you going away. All right. Slip knot, you basically are going to take a loop, twist it around here, take another loop with the tail end like this, and push it through the hole you just made. Okay. And then you leave it like that. You can hold it and then just do this. Zoop, like so. And you've got a slip knot right there. All right. Perfect. Now what you're going to do, I would actually recommend kind of wrapping the wick around there so that it's all underneath your plumber's putty. And then take a little piece of plumber's putty like this, and we're gonna roll it into a ball, just like when you were 5 and you played Play-Doh. Okay, so I have a little ball of plumber's putty, and we're gonna just smush this over the top of our wick, like so. And you're basically trying to form a seal over the entire wick. I find sometimes if you leave a little tail out, the wick will find a way, the wax will find a way of escaping through that little tail, and you'll have wax all over the place. When we do get to the actual pouring part of this, I'm gonna grab, I have an old cookie sheet that I use just for this purpose, just in case, because you never know when it will still get, it still sometimes leaks. This is a good preventative measure, and it does work most of the time, but you just never know. It's better to not have wax all over your table. So there you go. And now we are all ready. We've got all 3 of our molds ready to go. We're just going to do one of these today, I think. So yeah, we'll just wait for our beeswax to finish melting, and then we can pour them. So here we are. My beeswax here is mostly melted. It's almost ready to go. There's actually a couple more things I forgot to mention that you are going to need. Now, it depends on what kind of melter you're using. I'm using a Presto pot. I need a ladle because there's no other way for me to get the wax out of the melter. So it depends on what kind of melter you're using, but you may need a ladle. I have an old metal one that I got years ago at Goodwill, and it works fantastic. The other thing you're going to want to need, or you're going to need, is something to center your wicks with. I have wick bars that I use. You could use a pencil that you actually wrap around the wick. Actually, maybe I'll do that just to demonstrate how you can do it if you don't have a wick holder. But yes, you're going to need that too. So let me go grab those really fast. So I've got wick bars, which are, you know, they're these little metal bars that you use to center wicks. So those will be perfect. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do before we pour our wax into the molds is to coat the inside of our molds with the silicone spray. That's just going to be extra security that you're going to be able to get the pillar and or taper out beforehand. So we're going to just slightly coat the insides of each mold. Think of it like you know, when you're baking and you're coating the inside of your pan, it's kind of like that. This one's going to be a little harder. Actually, what I'm going to do for this one is take it off so I can do both sides because it's so narrow. There we go. Perfect. Perfect. But I got silicone on my hands. All right. And then we're going to put that to the side because I don't need these anymore. All right. Now let's check the temperature on our wax. It's actually 191. It's a little above 185, but that's okay. As long as it's just in the short term, you're good to go. And it's melted here, so we are ready to pour. So I have regular metal pouring pitchers, but for demonstration purposes, I like to use the glass. If you're going to get one of these glass ones, get the Anchor Hawking one, not the other brand, which I can't think of the name right now. But the spout on the other brand, it makes a huge mess when you try to pour it. It doesn't work. There's been a lot of complaints about that over the years, but the Anchor Hawking one works great. So yeah. All right. So you don't need a scale really for this because we're just going to be eyeballing it, putting it in here. If you wanted to do that, feel free. You can weigh it if you know how much each of your molds hold. Or you can use my candle math calculator to figure out how much wax each of your molds holds. I'll link to that video as well. And then you could do it so that you don't have to melt the whole thing. I actually just will let this solidify and you can take it right out of the Presto pot once it's cool. So I don't really worry about it. I just melt more than I need and then I'm good to go. So we're just going to put our beeswax into our pitcher here. Nice drippy wax. All right. So let me go get my cookie sheet to put under these. I'll be right back. Okay. All right. So I have all of my molds lined up and I've got my wax ready to go right here. And you can see beeswax cools really fast. It's solidifying because, well, the container was cold, so there's that. But we're going to pour the big one here first and hope that the plumber's putty is effective. I guess we'll see, right? We'll see. Just have your fingers crossed. This one's going to take the most wax, so it's good to start with. All right. You can just pour it right up to the edge. Perfect. And then we'll get some more wax for the others. All right, the taper, you're up next, Mr. Taper. Now, actually, no, that's what I would suggest for this is you're going to want to like pull it tight and then pull it around here and hold it with your finger so that it doesn't leak out the bottom when you first get started. You can actually put, if you can pour past the wick bar, you can put that on first. I've done that before, but it's kind of a difficult thing, so we're just going to pour this in here. There we go. That should be good. We'll let that sit for a second, and then we'll do the last one here. This one's a little bit, I'm just going to center it in place. Kind of squish it down. And there we go. I'm just going to pour my excess back in here. Perfect. And then we're going to turn off our melter because I don't need it anymore. All right. And we're going to put the wick bars on. And just be really careful not to tip over your molds. That would be a shame. And then perfect. Now we're going to let these sit for, I'm going to say probably an hour. And then we're going to have to come back and do a second pour. Beeswax and any other pillar wax that you're going to work with, soy wax maybe not as much, but beeswax and paraffin wax, if you did a 50-50 soy beeswax blend, would do the same thing. They're going to shrink a lot. The waxes are going to shrink. And you're going to find you're going to need to poke holes in them, in these bigger ones. They're called relief holes, and that's going to allow the wax to shrink down instead of like making a hole in the middle. This one, you're not going to be able to do that, but you are going to find that it's going to shrink a little bit, and then you're going to still need to top it off. So yes, we're going to do that when we come back. So yeah, let's just let these cool, and then we'll come back and do a second pour. All right, so we're back. I've taken the wick bars off of these just so I could see what's going on underneath, and so that I can poke relief holes. I've got a wooden skewer right here that I use for that. You could also use like a butter knife, I suppose. That might be a little bit more difficult, but whatever you have that's pokey that you can use, you're basically just gonna poke a hole right here like this, and you want to kind of wiggle it around. The wax is still going to be hot underneath, and that's fine. We're basically just opening up the skin that's formed on the surface so that it can shrink in the proper direction. Instead of shrinking from the outside in and sort of forming a vacuum, this will like allow it to shrink downwards. Yeah, I think I explained that. Hopefully, I don't know. Okay, just put those back in there. All right, and then we're gonna do the same thing with this little guy here. There. And then these ones, you're going to want to let them sit for a couple of hours. You may actually need to come back and poke relief holes again in this larger one. The larger the pillar, the more you're going to have to do that, just because the skin will keep forming, and you want it to be able to shrink downwards. You don't want any holes to form in the middle of it. If there's a hole in the middle of your pillar, like a hollow spot, when you start burning it, eventually the wick will get to that point where there's a hollow spot, and what will happen is it'll drop down, the flame will get really big, okay, and it can create a fire hazard because it can get too hot. It can also cause your pillar to blow out so that there's wax all over your table. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things. You don't want holes in your pillars at all. It's not good. So the more relief holes, if you come back and just keep poking this every, 40 minutes to an hour, just to make sure that that stays open so it can cool going downwards and that you don't have any holes forming, then you're good. The smaller ones aren't going to be as big of a deal. I might come back here once and just check and make sure that there's no holes forming in there. But yeah, we should be good. So this taper, we can actually do a second pour already. Even after an hour, it's cooled enough to where you can do that. I'm going to put my wax in here. We're just going to top it off. I haven't left this on. I turned it off and then I turned it back on when I needed it. But I'm just going to top this guy off. It won't take very much for the taper. There we go. And then the rest of them we'll just let cool for another couple of hours, doing relief holes every 40 minutes or so. And then we'll come back and do a second pour. Okay, so now these have had time to cool sufficiently. And I poked holes in this larger one especially a couple of times just to make sure that it doesn't have any hollow spots in it. And you can see how far it's gone down because the wax shrinks down there. And this one I did about, I think it was one more time at least, just to make sure. You don't want any holes in the middle of your candles. So now what we're going to do is we're going to top these off just to fill in the spaces in there. I've got my wax remelted right here. And you do actually want to heat your wax for your second pour a little hotter than the first so that it adheres really well. So for this, I would actually say go ahead and just heat it up to like 195 just briefly. You don't want to hold it there for too long, but for a short period of time, it's okay. And we'll turn that off because we're not going to need it. And then you're just going to pour, see I've got the holes in there. You're going to pour carefully into those holes just to fill them up. There we go. And then we'll do this little one here. Perfect. And then we're just going to let those cool and it'll be time to take them out of their molds. Okay, now I've let these cool. It's been about an hour. And we're going to go ahead and unmold them. We'll start with this taper. I think this one's the most fun. Now, pro tip, if you can't get them out, pop them in the freezer for like 10 minutes and they'll come right out. It helps them shrink a little bit. We're going to try this first. And sometimes if you sort of wiggle it around to loosen it. Beeswax is really sticky. Whoop, there we go. It came out. So there you have a taper. I think that turned out pretty good. And we're going to trim the wick on the bottom here with where'd my wire trimmers go? I lost them. Here they are. With the wire trimmers, you're going to trim the wick on the bottom. Just flush with the taper. And there you go. And in order to put this in a taper mold, you're going to have to shave some of this on the bottom so that it fits in there. But now you have a nice taper you can use. So that's the first one. Let's do this one. So for these ones, you're going to take your plumber's putty off the bottom. Like so. It's all goopy. And then we're going to pull it. Now, word to the wise, if you try to take these out of the molds before they're cool with these bigger ones, it's going to take a lot longer. I've had it happen where I get impatient and I try to take it out and you'll pull the wick right out of the middle because it's still soft. So don't do that. Whoop, and there you go. Well, we have a nice candle. We'll trim the wick on here. Now with these ones, what you're going to want to actually do, which I'll show you in a minute, is you're going to want to level the bottom because it's crooked right now. I don't know if you can see that. Just because my table's a little crooked, it's not even. So we're going to want to level it. But I think that came out really nice for that one. And last, but surely not least, let's take all this stuff off. It's so sticky. But, you know, it does its job. There we go. Pull that loose. All right. Now this one, when I topped it, I know I got a little wax drizzled over the side, so we'll see how that turned out. But one thing I forgot to say is when you're doing your second pour, to fill in those relief holes, you want to be really careful not to pour over the edge because it'll have shrunk by then and you can get wax dripping down the sides. Unless that's the look you're going for, then, you know, by all means. Okay. Just gonna squeeze. Come on, little fella. This one wants to be stubborn today. I bet. Here. Let me just do this. Ready? Try to loosen it. Here we go. Now it's coming. Or it's not. It's gonna come out, I promise. All right, this one might have been a good candidate for the freezer. You never know. That wasn't me.
Okay.
Yeah. FYI, this right here, this is why it didn't want to come out of the mold. Because I did that. When you're pouring your second pour, be really careful not to pour over the edges, because if you get wax stuck down the sides like that, it makes it a lot harder to get out of the mold. So, yeah. Okay, so while we're waiting for that special shaped pillar to cool down in the freezer, I'm going to show you how to level out your pillars. I use my Presto pot. It's empty and it's, whoop, I unplugged it, and I put it on low. Just fix this. Okay, so I put my Presto pot on low and it's empty. There's no wax in it. And basically what you're gonna do, so I've got my pillar, which you can see it's a little crooked on the bottom. Okay, so if you don't have a level, you're just gonna have to try to eyeball this as best you can. You're basically leveling it. You can kind of circle it around here, hold it down, or even push it just to smooth it on the bottom. There we go. And then you can kind of do this sort of thing to smooth out the wick on the bottom there, rubbing it on the surface. I don't know if we're there yet. This is where a level can be really nice. It's just a little bit in that corner. I'm spinning it in here while holding the wick. Get it as level as possible. I think that that mold that I used might actually be a little bit skewed, funnily enough, but because it looks like it's a little wonky. I think that's pretty close though. There we go. So I don't know if you can see that. It's pretty straight. Hey, Caleb. And this one doesn't really need any leveling, so to speak. Again, this one you're just going to want to trim it on the bottom before you put it in your holder so that it stays in and doesn't fall out when you're trying to burn it. So we've got those two. Let's go get the other one out of the freezer. It should be ready by now. All right. So let's move this out of the way. Out of the freezer. It feels a lot more wiggly. It told me secretly that it does want to come out of here. It just wants to be stubborn about it. And we're going to kind of squeeze all the way around. Come on, you can do it. Woo! It's like birthing a child. And there you go. There you have. And you can see I dripped a little bit right there. That'll actually come off. It's a nice thing about beeswax. There we go. And you have a nice pillar candle. to level it on the bottom, you can do the same thing. So we'll just take our Presto here. Now, if you don't have a Presto, you can use like a hot plate on low with a little pan on it. You're just going to be exposing it to the heat for just a little bit just to melt it. So it's not that big of a deal. It's a little spot on here. Okay. And then we're just going to hold it by the wick, drop it down in here slowly, and then sort of spin it. There we go. There we go. There you have it. It's all leveled out. And we can trim this guy off the top here. And there's a little spot of something there. It's like a little dust. There we go. That off. And you're all set. Now you have all different sizes of pillars and a taper. Basically, this whole concept of the way that you pour the pillar, you poke your relief holes, you do the second pour, and then leveling them off and everything, it's the same for any type of pillar candle you're going to use. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and leave me a comment below or get in touch with me. You can go to our website, candeocandle.com or candeocandlesupply.com. All my contact info is on there. Text or email, either way. I hope you enjoyed this. Yeah, I really enjoy doing these tutorials. I hope that you're learning from them or that it's helping somebody out there who's just getting started. If you have any other tutorials that you want me to do or any suggestions, just let me know. And other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching. And don't be afraid to shine. Oh, and don't forget to like and subscribe. That helps us out a lot. Thanks, guys. Bye. One more pro tip here. You can actually take like a microfiber cloth when you're done and you can polish your candle like this. It gives it a lot more shine and it gets any of the smaller imperfections off. And it just looks a lot nicer. It cleans it up. Of course, I have one imperfection on here because I didn't clean my mold good enough on the bottom, but that's okay. We'll turn it around. You can polish the top. And it just makes it a lot shinier overall. So I'll do that with this one. You can kind of see what I mean. So there's the before. Isn't that beautiful? Now we can enjoy a nice bubble bath for dinner for two. All right. Thanks, guys.
And I love you. Boy, a bad time to say the wrong name, huh, Ross?